Thank you, Terry. So I'm Dakota, and quite obviously, I am here to share my story. So I'm going to do that now. So I believe that my life has two parts, the before and the after. In the before, I heard children should be seen and not heard more than I heard I love you. The before was a place where food was scarce, a place where I would hide in the closet and eat the pet food because I was just that hungry. In this before period, I watched my biological brother and mother experience abuse at the hands of my biological father. I learned how to be a good liar so I wouldn't experience this firsthand. I experienced the pressure to be perfect, and there was no excuse for anything less. I was expected to uphold perfect grades, come in first in my majorette competitions, and be a caregiver to my 5 other siblings after school and on the weekends. If these expectations were not met, I knew what would be waiting for me on the other side, as the punishments were made very clear. For a little while, holding myself to these unrealistic expectations kept me safe. And then one day, they didn't. Some of the most vivid memories from my childhood are moments when my brother and biological mother had fallen to my biological father's abuse. My brother had borrowed a game from his friend at school, and I cleaned up his cuts. My mother had come home 10 minutes late from work. I chased her down the road on my bike, begging her to come back after she'd been thrown out. I remember my first day. I was sitting at the table doing homework, and one of the dogs had gone to the bathroom on the kitchen floor. Before I knew it, I was on the floor. Somehow this was my fault. None of this is easy to share, but I also understand how important it is to create a full picture of the children that we're helping and the afters that we're creating at Camp Susan Curtis, because that's truly where mine began. I began seeing that there was an after and that this was maybe something I might deserve when I was about 8 years old. This was the year when I was introduced to a place where it was believed that children should not only be seen, but also heard. This place was Camp Susan Curtis. At camp, we talk about how this is a place where kids get to be a kid and there's nothing truer. At camp, I didn't have to worry about making dinner or babysitting. When I was offered the opportunity to experience a summer camp, I couldn't wait. I was never afraid of leaving home. Honestly, I couldn't leave fast enough. The day I got my packing list in the mail, my suitcase was packed a full month and a half before I even got to go. Walking through the gates was a feeling I'll never forget. It was the most at home I had ever felt in the 8 years of my life. My first summer wasn't always easy. It was hard to let go of my caregiver tendencies. Even as a little cabin 6 girl, I wanted to hang out with the counselors as I felt I fit in with them more than I fit in with my peers. I had to learn how to be a kid. I didn't know how to play. I didn't know how to let go, and I was afraid of making mistakes. But by the end of those 2 weeks, I let go, I gave in, and I began to believe in the life that could be. I went back to school that fall, and I started to realize that my home life wasn't really normal. There were kids who had 3 meals a day because that's what it meant to be taken care of, and food wasn't something to be earned. I realized that parents should help with homework, and it shouldn't be my job to make sure that everyone had done their homework at home. I was missing summer. I missed being a kid. I missed being heard. I'd learned what it felt like to be safe, and I missed it. When I arrived for my second year at camp, I couldn't hold it in. I had a counselor that I was very fond of. She made me feel very safe, and she made me feel like she really cared. Her name was Shawneen, and she was the first person I felt comfortable enough to tell my story to. I told her one night after Summit under the stars at Camp Susan Curtis, and I remember being told that I was brave and that I was strong. I spent the rest of the session just being a kid, catching frogs and swimming in the lake. My life seemed to move quickly after that. My biological parents got divorced. It was ugly. And my brother and I were used as bargaining chips. When asked to choose who I liked better, I always chose my biological father because I knew that's what was to be expected, and I knew that that's how I kept myself from being hurt. Then my biological father lost custody, so we moved in with my biological mother until she lost custody. Then I was introduced to the foster care system at 10 years old. My first placement wasn't ideal, but I was placed with my sister, so I felt extremely grateful. Although the expectation had been lifted, I still felt very parental towards her, and I wanted to protect her, more than I wanted to protect myself. This is what I think pushed me to strive for more in my life. Then I met Donna and Leon, who would later become my mom and dad. I found out I would be moving in with them while I was at camp one summer, and it couldn't have been more perfect. The two best parts of my life were coming together. My mom understood how important camp was to me, and she was always there to be sure I was signed up in time. And she cheered me on as I completed the LIT and CIT programs. And she was there to bring me for my first job interview, which was for camp. If I stop and think about what my life should have looked like, I'm terrified. If I hadn't spoken up, would I even be here? Would I be expected to still be taking care of my family? Would I have my own family? I still struggle with the question of what would have happened if I spoke up sooner, and why didn't I? I believe I will always have a little guilt that goes with me, but I've also come to understand that no 10-year-old should ever have to make the decision that I had been asked to make. Being a child who grew up in poverty and in foster care, the statistics would say I shouldn't have amounted to much. I should be working a dead-end job. I've now held 3 supervisory positions, and I'm only 25. My first of which was at camp. It was a goal of mine from year 1 as a camper to become a lifeguard and later the waterfront director. I dreamed big. I became a lifeguard at the age of 15 and worked my way up through the years to become the assistant waterfront director. The year that I turned 21, it was finally my time to be the waterfront director. I was the waterfront director at camp for 3 years. I was then promoted to the recreation director, which gave me the added responsibility of sports and games programming, which included archery. And most recently, I've become the bridge director. These positions have allowed me to step into supervisory roles in the workforce. They would tell you I shouldn't have graduated from high school. I graduated 3rd in my class. They would say I shouldn't have gone to college. I did. I received my Bachelor's of Science in Athletic Training from the University of Southern Maine in 2017. Only 3% of all foster children will go on to college, but I didn't stop there. I'm currently in my 3rd year of graduate school for occupational therapy at the University of Southern Maine, and I'm set to graduate this year. I never gave up. I was exposed to USM for the first time through a camp to campus trip when I was 15 years old. I'd previously never heard of it, and so it's a thank you to camp for sure for showing me the place I came to call home for 4 years. Resilient, brave, and strong are all words that people have used to describe me. And honestly, there are still times that I struggle with this because looking back, there really was no other option. I either kept pushing or my life would be very different from the one that I have built for myself. I wouldn't have had this mentality without the amazing support from what would become my camp family and my mom. These are all people who believed in me until I could believe in myself. I'm forever grateful that I got an after and that I found the courage, strength, and resiliency to get me there. And it all started at CSC.